Hey fam, what's going on? It's Kyle Henderson along with Andrew Bone. Breaking news, Keon Keeley has committed to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Here with Andrew Bone to break it down. Bone, huge day for Alabama. What you got for us?
Well, happy Monday. This is something that I think Alabama fans have been, waiting for. We weren't really sure exactly when it was going to take place, but definitely felt like Keon Keeley was leaning towards Alabama, for the last several months.
Mhm.
Really ever since he decommitted from Notre Dame back in August. There was a lot of rumors that were kind of floating around then that he was about to flip to Alabama, but decided to hold off. And
Mhm.
he ends up taking some visits. Visited Alabama, took an official visit to Ohio State. I think Ohio State did a really good job as far as getting just into the race because it was all Alabama
Yep.
after he decommitted from Notre Dame. And there was some talk about Florida because he grew up a Florida fan, been to Gainesville a bunch of times, but it really came down to Alabama and Ohio State. And he had a really good relationship with Ohio State defensive line coach Larry Johnson. They really kind of sold him on being that next, Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa,
Mhm.
Chase Young type player in their defensive scheme. But he also sees the success that Alabama's had with pass rushers, and I remember. I think it was the very first time I ever talked to Keon was back in, I think it was January, and it was
Mhm.
about maybe the day or day after he received his offer from Coach Saban, and he told me he said, I grew up really liking Alabama, always kind of followed them,
Mhm.
but my two favorite players growing up were Christian Miller and Pharrell Lewis.
Okay.
Two outside linebackers, great pass rushers for the Crimson Tide. And obviously, as he got a little bit older, really started to like what Alabama was doing with, with Will Anderson, with Dallas Turner, with Chris Braswell. But kind of sees himself in that similar role. I mean, this is a big dude. I mean, he's 6'6", 245
Mhm.
pounds. I mean, he's got length, he's got bend. I mean, he's very explosive. He's just a unbelievable athlete, and definitely somebody that Alabama has had their sights on for a very long time. I mean, once they offered him that scholarship back in January, they heavily recruited him ever since then. He took an unofficial visit to Alabama for junior day. I think it was like a week after he received the offer. He took a visit to Alabama. There
Mhm.
was a lot of positive momentum on Alabama's side after that trip, but then things kind of died down. It kind of got quiet. He didn't really talk about any other visits. Didn't talk. Really didn't talk to any media. And I think a lot of that had to do with his commitment to Notre Dame. He wanted to honor that. Notre Dame recruits weren't out there taking visits elsewhere or doing anything like that. But then he ends up making a trip back to Tuscaloosa in late July. Attended the Champions Cookout. Was around a lot of Alabama commitments. Guys like Richard Young, Hunter Osborne, Justice Haynes, Miles McVay. A lot of guys who've been heavily recruiting him, talking to him for the last several months, trying to get him, to feel comfortable in the class, but also, just wanting him to be a part of their team because they know that he's a difference maker and he's a great player. Rushing off the edge, as you see. Coleman Hutzler, Alabama's outside linebackers coach, his first year at Alabama. I mean, you look at the guys that he's helped Alabama recruit, especially at that outside linebacker position with Keon Keeley and Yanze Pierre. Yanze ranked number 34 overall in the country. Now you get Keon Keeley on board, the number 3 overall player in the 2023 recruiting class. I mean, it's a special linebacker group so far. It can get better. There are some big names that are still out there that I think Alabama, definitely has a great chance to land, including Quay Rousseau, the 5-star in-state linebacker out of Carver High School. You also have Arian Carter, the 4-star linebacker out of Smyrna High School in Tennessee. So I don't think their linebacker class is completely done just yet. But man, you got to feel really excited today if you're Alabama. You already have the number 1 recruiting class in the
Yeah.
country. Now you just add a top 3 overall player in the country to your class, and there's a lot of big names who are still out there that they can, certainly add between now and next Wednesday.
Here with Andrew Bone, a Bama insider. Keon Keeley has committed to the Alabama Crimson Tide just a couple days away from the early signing day period. Bone, as we kind of round out this video, in terms of the momentum that it adds for Alabama, kind of going into early signing day, and really a message that Alabama is still Alabama. I think there's a lot of people out there. They lost 2 games by a total of 4 points. It's like the dynasty's over. All this stuff, it's horrible. But when we look to collectively what Saban was able to do with this class still and getting Keeley to jump on today, I think it's a big momentum boost going into that early signing day period. Your take on that before we let you go?
Well, I think in the day that we're in with NIL and all this kind of stuff going on, and there have been some recruiting battles that have been lost because of NIL, and it's kind of it's a kind of a funny situation because you see recruits mention it now. I mean, a year ago, people didn't want to talk about it at all. Like, yeah, NIL deals were going on, but nobody was really open about it. And now all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, NIL is playing a big part in my recruitment.
Yeah.
And Alabama, hasn't really. I think they're involved in the NIL game. I think would be naive to think they're not involved in NIL at all because NIL deals are happening, but at the level of some of these, it's not as probably flamboyant as about it. But I do think that Alabama has certainly been involved in that regard. Not necessarily the coaching staff, but the NIL collective. They're certainly trying to make things work. But at the end of the day, Alabama's been able to really sell recruits on the program, Nick Saban, the development, the way that you can come in, contribute, be part of a possible national championship team. Alabama didn't get there this year. They didn't make it to the college football playoff, and because Alabama doesn't make it to the college football playoff, everybody wants to claim that the dynasty's dead. The program's going off into the abyss. But you look at the guys that they have in this class, and this is kind of the class that I feel like is going to really potentially bring Alabama back to what they want to get to. You go into the state of Georgia, you land the top 2 recruits in Georgia. You still got to hold on to those guys, with Caleb Downs and Justice Haynes. But from top to bottom, it's a really outstanding class, and there's still some really good players that are still out there that I feel like they're going to have, a chance to sign. I think with Keon Keeley committing to Alabama today, it gives them that extra juice, extra momentum because, they're certainly going to use that. Keon Keeley just committed to your program. You're not going to talk about that on the recruiting trail. You absolutely are going to talk about that. So, and the majority of these guys that Alabama is still going after are defensive targets. So you're trying to recruit these guys to join a defense. It's got some special players in it. And, depending on how it may end over the course of the next 9 days, it's got a chance to be one of Coach Saban's best defensive classes in the in the last decade. So, really intrigued to see how it all kind of shapes out. But he may be the only guy that commits, before signing day because a lot of these guys are pushing all the way to signing day. There's already guys that have, commitments set up for signing day. Quay Rousseau, James Smith, they're planning on doing something on ESPN. But most of these other kids are planning on waiting until next week. So this is a good boost for Alabama heading into heading into these final days. And you got to give a lot of credit to the, it's not just Coleman Hutzler. I mean, Pete Golding, Nick Saban, the whole staff was involved here, and they were able to get one of their big names on the commitment board. And you look back at, I guess it was about 3 weeks ago when Alabama hosted Auburn for the Iron Bowl. There was all this talk leading up, what was Keon Keeley going to do that weekend? Because he had already taken his official visit to Alabama. Was he going to come back to Tuscaloosa? Was he potentially going to go up to Columbus and go to the Ohio State-Michigan game? Well, he ends up in Tuscaloosa. Kind of let the cat out of the bag on Friday, which we had heard that he was coming a few days prior, but had to keep things quiet until he arrived in Birmingham. But once he did that, we were able to share that news, and I think that visit, being around all the commitments, being around the players again, being around the coaching staff, and just being really involved in everything that was going on around campus. I think that's definitely helped even more. And I think after that trip, he knew for certain where he wanted to go to school, and I know that he announced his commitment today, but have heard that he had also made that decision, maybe a week or so ago. So big win for Alabama on the recruiting trail over Ohio State, over Florida. I don't think anybody's got to worry too much about, he's committed, but is he going to sign?
Yeah.
You commit a week before National Signing Day. Most of these kids are going to stick with their decision. So I'm not too worried about Keon Keeley potentially going elsewhere.
He's Andrew Bone. I'm Kyle Henderson. Keon Keeley is in for the Alabama Crimson Tide big pickup for Nick Saban just a couple days before early signing day. Stay tuned to BamaInsider.com. Go back to BamaInsider.com. Read all the great content by our staff at Bama Insider. He's Andrew Bone. I'm Kyle Henderson. One more time reporting to you from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Have a beautiful day, and we'll catch you next video. Hit the like and subscribe button. We'll catch you soon.